Demons. I've seen them. They're everywhere.
Fun day, huh?
Tell me about it.
You still gonna take the train tonight?
Sisters, hear the voice. Hope is God and God is love.
Who do you want to win your soul?
God is with us tonight.
Well, speaking of Canadian-made horror movies, End of the Line. This is a film directed by Maurice Devereaux, and it is also clearly low budget, but it also has huge ambition. And I think this is one of those movies where you just have to, like... I think when I was describing it to you, I gave you a heads up that there's some weak acting in the movie. And then I also said that it had other qualities, in quotation.
You said it was, quote, the most challenging movie of the bunch. And I was very curious to watch it to see what you think about that. Like, will I be intellectually challenged, or is this your nice way of saying that this movie is terrible and sort of put this on the list?
It has the most potential for someone to have a bad reaction to it, I think. I could understand someone making the argument that it's terrible, but I am not going to make the argument that it's terrible. I mean, I don't know that it all completely holds together, and I do think some of the performances are incredibly raggedy, but it also has scenes that genuinely take the air out of you. Like... They went there. Like, they absolutely fucking went for it in some of these scenes. How successfully from scene to scene we can argue. And it's unique. Like, it's I give it a lot of points. Like, it stuck with me after I watched it. Like, it wasn't one of those things that was instantly forgettable to me. Some of the reasons I remember it are maybe not as complimentary as others, but I think it is significant and worthy of distributing points to a movie to say it makes an impression, you know? And I think End of the Line definitely accomplishes that, if nothing else.
So I didn't love every element of it, but I loved this movie from start to finish. The only other movie that I had a similar reaction to in terms of understanding all of the things about it that weren't that good but not caring was the first time I saw the movie Cube, which has some pretty terrible acting, has a terrible score. There's some things in it that are like questionable, but as a whole, there was just something special about this movie to me. So I was really surprised, because with your warning, I was pretty sure that I would hate this movie. It turned out to be, it's definitely not the best movie on this list, but it may have been my favorite watch of these six. But part of that is because I had already seen the best movie on the list, not to tip my hand.
It's genuinely surprising, and yes, Hereditary's on this list, so everybody's playing for second place, right? But not to spoil the meal for the listeners, but let's be real. I don't know, you're not sure what you're seeing, what's real and what's not, and a lot of times in movies that can be a problem for me. It starts with a woman having a dream/vision of some demonic creature attacking her on a subway, and then... Sorry,
by the way, if there was one scene that I would have cut for sure, it would be that one.
Right.
I think it would have been just to let it unfold, because then the twist at the end that they're actually demonic beings would have perhaps, although I kind of suspected anyway, but perhaps it would have had more impact. But sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead. So that's the stream.
Just to set the scene for people, because a lot of people missed this one, and it's not super easy to get your hands on. Unfortunately, it somehow slipped the net of the culture, this movie. But yeah, it starts with a creepy vision of some demonic figure attacking this woman on a subway. And she actually wakes up on the subway, and it's actually these religious cult figures are showing up in weird groups all over the place. They have these beepers that start going off, and they start to attack people around them. Sorry?
Yeah, I think you're jumping ahead. So she has this vision of being attacked by demons on a subway, But then, much like the 2004 Dawn of the Dead, we cut to her job, which is at a hospital, and there's some weird stuff going on, including one patient who had left early, and there were some crayon drawings on her wall about rapture stuff going on. And then we see presumably her standing in front of the train and then getting some vision and freaking out and jumping in front of the train.
Right.
And then she goes and then our main character, we see her on the subway platform.
Sort of the real movie starts to kick in. Yeah. So we're jumping characters there. I apologize. The key point that I'm trying to make is that we have a group of survivors that start initially on a subway that are being chased by these crazed cultists that have these crucifix knives, and they are saving everyone that they see by killing them. So anyone not in the cult is being massacred. And I find that the characterizations by a lot of the cult performers are huge. Like they're almost absurd in their presentation, and it's hard to, like, I don't know what somebody, who's that wrapped up in a cult belief system that they're enthusiastically smiling about cutting throats. Like, no one really knows what that is like, but I'm not always convinced by these performances. I'm trying to be as gentle as I can. It's not easy doing, especially the weirder thing that you're asked to do in a camera, like the harder it's going to be, the bigger potential of looking ridiculous, the more self-conscious you're going to be as a performer. And these actors are asked to say and do ridiculous things.
Well, and you have to think, this is a low-budget Canadian movie, so most of these people are like, Fringe Festival performers? They're like theater people, maybe the first time in front of a camera, so
exactly.
They're playing to the back of the room a little bit.
And that is felt. Like, I just want to call it out because it would be wrong not to. Like, there's definitely a sliding scale as far as the quality of the acting throughout the movie. But the energy of the story and the maliciousness and the sort of mean-spiritedness of the movie kind of starts to overtake some of those flaws for me. Just the fact that I genuinely don't know what they're going to show me next.
Well, and see, for me, weirdly, it wasn't the maliciousness, although we can get into a couple of the places where, wow, they went there. So it starts, like, our protagonist is on, she's had this traumatic experience where her patient died. She was the one that jumped in front of the train. And then she's getting harassed by this guy in a beige suit. And through the course of the movie and, like, background advertisement or news, I don't know how we're informed of this, but it's going on in the background that there's some sort of religious leader that's speaking in the city that day. And so all of the sects are sort of converged upon this. So there's all these people in these beige shirts, which are occultists, and one of them is harassing her on the platform, and so our main guy kind of steps in and pretends to know her, and then they're chatting together, and then the harasser goes back to lurk in the shadows, and then at some point the train stops, and then weird stuff starts to happen. Like, it loses all power. They're the only two on the car, so they get scared. And then this later middle-aged woman comes into the car, and she's all like, "Oh, thank God, there's people there. I was so scared." But then she attacks them with this crucifix that's got it. And what I was thinking is those two people, it was going to be them being chased by people with knives. One of the things that I really liked about it is there were other people on the train, and they started getting attacked in little groups, and it was one where, like, the survivors came together as an interesting group of people with interesting mixes of personalities, and it reminded me of one of my sentimental favorite movies, The Warriors, where it's just like this oddball group of people
thrown together.
Yeah, and getting chased through the subways of, it must have been Montreal where it was filmed, right?
I believe so, yeah. But then I do want to speak to some of the darkness of it, because I bring this up all the time talking about low-budget Canadian movies. They're just a little bit harsher than they need to be. But a pregnant woman has her baby cut out of her and placed on her dead body. and a couple of 12-year-old boys try to attack the group, and one of them gets their head caved in and dies a really slow, kind of traumatizing death on camera. And like, they're kind of impactful scenes, but they seem almost out of a different movie. You're not prepared for them when they come. You're just like, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those movies that does go there, but so I was surprised by the excuse me, one of the survivors, not the survivor from the train, but he was like a city worker, and then we learned through conversations that he had been seeing this woman. He was newly married to her. She was pregnant. He was really in love with her, and turns out she was in the cult. And then did he have to kill his city worker friend?
He gave them access so that they could kill his city worker friend. So he basically is responsible for that death, yes.
And then he had to kill his wife, but he wouldn't do it, so she killed him? Was that how it worked?
I guess.
They killed her. So the whole point, the reason that why they're doing this killing is because the cult believes that this rapture is happening, and if they kill people before the demons come, then they get saved. So they all say they're doing the work of God. And so like these two 12-year-old kids ambush our group of survivors who totally don't want to bash in their heads with a crowbar, but then one of them gets stabbed or something,
yeah.
And he kind of reflexively bashes in that kid's head. Again, it's not gratuitous. It's not overly graphic. Even the fetus that was carved out of that woman's stomach was a little on the graphic side.
Yeah.
But even then, I think it was more like the zombie baby in the Dawn of the Dead. Like it didn't feel particularly visceral.
It's one of those horror movie things when, you're just a kid and watching horror movies. You're supposed to see things that are forbidden, that you're not supposed to see, and that is definitely that. It's just, I wasn't expecting it in this movie, and you just kind of get hit with it. So, yeah, and I think there is a certain portion of the audience that would definitely spoil the meal for them.
Yeah, for sure. I think that certain demographics would be very upset with that. The thing that I most disliked is in just purely purely the casting. So all of the women in it were like super unbelievably hot in a very particular way, and there were a lot of sexual harassment / rape attempt scenes. Unlike the last movie with the hanging women handled as well as it could be,
right.
This one I do actually get the sense that the director was a sleazy piece of shit. Like, I don't know anything about him, but it just seems like the kind of movie that a sleazy piece of shit would make. And those scenes were starting to make me uncomfortable after a while. But mercifully, they never went too far with it.
No. Yeah, one of the cultists, and I think he's sort of like almost problematically evil in that he doesn't seem to have any loyalties. He doesn't seem to be loyal to the cult or to his own survival. He just does the worst thing in any given scene to help keep escalating things. And I get what they're going for with the smiling, happy, we're here to save you with the cult members, but I do think at times it undercuts the stakes a little bit.
So I kind of agree, but I kind of disagree. So at the very end, so all of these cultists, their pagers go off and they've got to kill people. And there's a certain window of time we learn that they're going to kill people. And I think one of our characters is cornered and they're just about to kill her. And then they all get another message on their pagers because this movie is from 2006 or whatever, and they still had pagers back then.
Right.
And then all the cultists start giving each other these poison pills and dying. And then what we learn is that they had this window. Presumably when they killed people with their crucifix knives, they actually were saving them because the demons started appearing afterwards. And in one of the very final shots, there's the demons, and they look like really ridiculous rubber-based monsters. But I actually liked how silly the demons looked. There was something about how silly they were that made them a little bit more scary. And I would put that in the same aesthetic as the cultists smiling a little bit too much and acting a little bit too big. Because, yes, from a practical point of view, this probably does come from not having a huge costume budget and
Yeah.
not being able to afford professional film actors. But on the other hand, it adds to a certain surreal vibe and a certain unpredictable vibe, and like, what is the tone of this, and the fact that the tone is never quite sure, so you never quite feel grounded.
Right. I liked them from a distance when we first saw them crawling in the ceiling or just peeking their head around a corner. This seems like the closer they got to the camera, the more, they looked like what they were, like people in weird rubber suits. But that's fine. I mean, again, I am always going to be cheering for a low budget movie. I do take issue, though, that those creatures were front and center in all of the marketing for the movie, because that is the big kind of holy shit, the end moment of the movie, and there would be way more impact to it if you weren't waiting for it to happen.
Yeah, and which is what I was saying earlier about the initial dream of the demons. Like, cut that, because it just seems like cultists killing people. Again, there's some point where you have to ask yourself, is the rapture really happening? That would be a twist, and then you're like, yeah, for sure, that's what it is. Like, it's not that hard to solve, but you don't need the movie fighting itself. And it also, even though I sort of suspected the twist early on, it didn't ruin my enjoyment. The movie doesn't rely on the twist for it to be an interesting movie. It was kind of, I don't know, it was a fun romp for me.
It was a group of survivors being whittled down. It sort of follows a slasher template in that regard, but like, who's going to get out of here how, I guess, would be the typical thing that we'd be thinking about. And instead it's like, when are they going to find out that the demons are actually here? Right? And that was an unfortunate misstep. But I'm glad you really liked it. I understand that there's a lot of people that would just, put their shields up really early in this movie and just not allow themselves to take the ride. And I do think if you allow yourself to take the ride, this is actually a pretty fun movie. It's like, it's completely unstable and weird and raggedy, but it somehow holds itself together.
Yeah, again, I'm going to have to say it's like Cube a lot, in that I had a really strong positive reaction to it. I don't know if I would recommend it, because if you recommend it to somebody and then they're like, the acting's bad, that's stupid, it's cheap. Like, if somebody were to watch this with folded arms, they would hate it. Because there's kind of a lot that's imperfect about it, but I don't know, it spoke to me.
Me too, brother.